We have a guest today who can ready to share his wisdom and experience, and he's from the Netherlands. He's Paul Bertens, and he's a corporate recruiter. So let's welcome with a big hand, Paul. Now the floor is yours, and please share your story and share your experience and what is that few things that you think a recruiter should know and how they can be successful in this industry, Paul.
Sure, I'll try my best. Good day, everyone. Thank you for having me on the show. We've talked a bit before the interview on what I could share with you. Of course, the recruiting, let's say the recruiting subject is all over the world. It is quite the same. We help people have new job opportunities and to get the most out of their career. But on the other hand, because of the cultural differences, everything else, recruiting in the Netherlands can be quite different than recruiting in, let's say, India or in the United States or even Belgium, which is on our southern border. So let me tell you a bit more about the experience I've had over the past few years. Please feel free to ask me whatever you want in between. So let's start with from the beginning. I've been in recruitment for, let's say, nearly 5 years now. Educational background in applied psychology, and during my study, I realized that the study was more focused on the let's say the classic psychology and how do you feel about that, and that's not really something that I wanted to do in my career. I wanted to have a bit more a commercial aspect in my role, and I knew from that start that recruitment would be something that I could enjoy and that I could be possibly good at as well. So I applied for my first job. It was well, the location of the job was quite near where I lived at the time. It was a 10-minute walk, so I could walk to my work. Had some interviews there, had a good connection with my coworkers, and I started working there. And I believe that was in August 2016, if memory serves me right. The role was primarily focused on sourcing, so the active headhunting for all sorts of companies. The company that I worked with at the time provided RPO services, but also single vacancy fillings. So in the start of my career, on the one hand, I worked for a larger international company, American-owned, so very, very tough roles, but also exciting to source and to recruit people that, let's say, had a salary of over 100,000 euros per annum. So that were challenging roles to start with as a junior recruiter or sourcer or whatever you want to call it. On the other hand, we had different roles for different companies at a bit different level as well. So a huge variety of roles I started working on. And as a starting recruiter with, let's say, a zero as experience, it was quite challenging because on the one hand, you had to work on your own networking skills. You had to find out how to find the right candidates, and when you found them, how to approach them, and when you've approached them and interested them for the position, how to get the information you needed to know about these candidates and introduce them to your to the company. So that was challenging. Most of it, the experience I've gained over the time was just a bit trial and error, just see where it goes. And sometimes it goes well, and you have a great hire with, let's say, a little less effort. And at other times you have a really challenging role, challenging candidates, people not replying to your messages. When you ask them questions, they either come up with the wrong answers or they think you're too invasive with your questions. So that was quite challenging. As I've mentioned, the RPO company that we worked for was American owned. So the vacancies I had to fill with my colleagues were not only based in the Netherlands, but it was the entire field of EMEA, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So a lot of international candidates as well. And for me, the most challenging part at that time was the cultural differences. As you may know, we in the Netherlands, we have the stigma of being quite direct. If we want to know something, we ask you straight up. And if we have to tell you something, we tell you something straight up too. If a candidate would ask me, and do you think I would be qualified for this position? And if the answer was no, then I'd tell them, well, based on the interview we've just had, I don't think you are the right match. And some candidates, especially in the Netherlands, they took it quite well and were like, okay, well, thank you for being honest, and wish you the best of luck in finding the right candidate. Maybe we'll be in touch later on. But other candidates in different roles, they were a bit baffled that I would just tell them straight up, no, I don't think so. So that's something I would just to get a bit of, well, we have a term we use in the Netherlands. It's not a Dutch term, but it's a German term, as we say it. It's called Fingerspitzengefühl. The bit of feeling you have on the tip of your fingers, and that's
How
just
would you say that? Could you please repeat?
Fingerspitzengefühl.
Fingerspitzengefühl, is that?
It's nearly correct, but as I said, it's not a Dutch term. We use it in the Netherlands quite a lot. It's
Okay,
actually
what does this mean, Paul?
How should I say it? It's the
Explaining a situation. That's what you call.
In this situation, you'd have to feel how you think the candidate would react. And
Okay.
let me just take a short moment to think how I would answer to you in English, because as you may notice, English isn't my first language. Well, Fingerspitzengefühl is your let's call it gut feeling.
Intuition, right?
Intuition, and just to be sensitive towards your candidates, your conversational partner, and just to try to maneuver your way through it, but still getting your message across, but being sensitive to how the other person you're talking to would consider the message over. So that's one of the first challenges I had. But as I said, trial and error. That's the only way you really get to know what another person would want, and just gain the experience. Of course, you can ask your other colleagues, have you recruited in this country yet? How are the persons? What do they like? What do they don't like? How should I express myself to someone, let's say from India, and how does that compare to talking to someone in the Netherlands? But in my experience, just trying and failing for that matter too. And don't be afraid to fail. That's the first lesson I really learned in that specific position. And I think that's also the hardest lesson I had to learn, because looking at my personality, my character, not failing is one of the things I work for hardest. I always want to win, very competitive for that instance. So in my book, let's call it that, failing or not getting the best result is bad X. And I thought about myself when something like this happened, and when I said to myself, well, I failed, I didn't do my job right, and so that was bad. Years later, in the position I'm in now, I can look back on those instances and tell to myself, well, that was just a learning experience. I am better off now, and in that case, it isn't failing. It's learning. But that's the tough lesson I had to learn. Let me think before I get off track a bit more because you wanted me to tell you a bit more about my experience in the Netherlands and, for instance, how recruiters are perceived.
Hmm.
And it's rather varied how recruiters are perceived. In my current position as a corporate recruiter, I work for a IT company, and so we have a large variety of roles. I recruit for software developers, but also account managers, managers, help desk agents, you name it. And there's also a bit of variety in how these people view recruiters. In my opinion, the word recruiter or the job recruiter to software development, to software developers, I would say they don't think recruiters are all that kind. The the experience I have, I have a really, I say a funny story about that as well.
Sure.
A cousin of mine on my wife's side, he is a software developer, and he recently graduated about a year ago. And I was now let's say 2 years ago, because a year ago I wouldn't have been able to talk to him personally because of the COVID situation. 2 years ago, graduated, and I was at a birthday party. I think was my uncle's, or doesn't even matter. And I was talking to him. So, well, Michael, you've recently graduated. I'm pretty sure you're looking for a starter job as a software developer. And how's your success at the moment? And do you need my help? I have a large network. I can give a few calls, and I'll try to set up an interview if you want to. And the response I got, no, I'm going to do it by myself. I've been asked by recruiters all over, and now I don't like them. They're only in it for their own gain, and he even went as far in that conversation to tell me, no, I don't like recruiters. All recruiters are bloodhounds. And that's when I said to him, well, Michael, you do know that I am a recruiter, right? Yeah, I know, but, well, we're okay, but we're family. But all recruiters are bad people. That is in most situations, especially when you yourself you're reaching out to software developers. Either they don't respond at all, which, to be honest, I do get, because they're approached every day, every minute by everyone, and also recruiters that make them promises that they can deliver. So I do understand the stigma some recruiters have in software developers.
How do you overcome these problems of working on tough positions or reaching out to these people? So would you like to share any of your own flavor or any kind of tips to our recruiters, for that? Okay, if you are on these kind of situations, or if you are working on a niche position, how do you want the recruiter's approach could be according to your way?
Well, I'd say, especially in this branch, in this software development, try to be as personal as you can. Show the software developers that you've really taken the time to look at their profile, to inspect the job they're having, to read upon what they have done, and if you have the time, check out if they have an account on, let's say, GitHub or Stack Overflow. See what projects they're working on, so you can ask them some questions about that. In that way, you have more points to show them you're really interested in them as a person and as a software developer, instead of just reaching out to every software developer that has a skill in, let's say, C# or PHP development or whatever. And when you do that, when you really show them that you care, or at least have taken the time to read up on what they do and why a certain position might be a good match for them, the response rate, it grows. I'm not saying that everyone has a positive reply, but the response rate, it's well, I can say it would skyrocket. And most of the replies you get even though when they're not open to any switch or whatsoever, they do give a positive feedback. They tell you, well, Paul, thank you for reaching out. Not currently in the market, but let's keep in touch. Maybe if something changes in the future, I'll reach out to you. So that is what I'd say, especially for niche groups or either niche groups or candidates that do get approached a lot. Try to be as personal and specific as can be, and tell them why you think the job you're working on is a good match for them.
Okay, true. Okay, so it's like more customized or personalizing the email, whatever we are sending.
If you have the time, this will definitely be worthwhile.
No, I agree with you on that one. I agree. So other than the portals, Paul, do you use any social media recruiting like LinkedIn or maybe GitHub or from Google? Do you do sourcing as well? Would you like to share any tips to our recruiters on that side?
Sure. Well, of course, I use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is still the biggest candidate base for recruiting. And there are quite a few recruiters that say, well, if you only use LinkedIn, are you really a recruiter or are you really a sourcer? But in my opinion, if you don't use LinkedIn, you are disregarding a huge portion of suitable candidates. So LinkedIn, numero uno, definitely LinkedIn. Depending on what kind of jobs you're working on, let's stick to the software developers for this instance. Stack Overflow, GitHub, use those two. Sourcing on those platforms is harder. It takes more time, but the information you get when sourcing on these platforms, it only gives you, let's say, better information about the candidate, and you can base your selection on that too. Because when you have more information, you can, let's say, you can check the match with the candidate and the vacancy you're working on. You can assess it way better. So I'd say, yes, use different platforms. If you have a little less time or if you're working on multiple vacancies at once, LinkedIn should be your go-to because it's easy for users to use. It has a huge database, of course. And you can send messages directly. Those three reasons for me make it that LinkedIn is my go-to.
So you have noticed any, because everyone with paid version, with free version, everyone goes there and you see there are not the recruiter who are not professionally trained or they're like very casual. They select or they send it, and there are automation tools which sends the emails or not messages to the people after adding it. So do you suggest that we should be having some kind of strategies while sending messages to in LinkedIn as well, Paul?
Yes, you should indeed, because what you said, a lot of untrained recruiters are people just reach out to everyone who is a software developer or whatsoever. That is an opportunity for every trained recruiter who knows how to approach the right person, who knows how to find the right person to excel as a recruiter. Because if let's call them, if your opponents, the untrained recruiters, just send out generic reach out. So, hey, I see you're a software developer. Let's get on the phone. I have a job for you. If you how should I say, if you have a different approach, know what your candidate wants, know what your candidate likes, know what your candidate is capable of, and you can combine these in your reach out or in your multiple stages of reach out, you will be way more successful than the recruiters that just hand out the generic reach outs.
That's
and in my opinion, if you that once again, it is when you have the time and you really need to focus on one specific position, make a candidate persona. And are you familiar with the terms? Now, I'm quite sure you are. You've been in recruitment for 17 years now.
I do. Okay. So for
Yeah.
individual, we could make, for a mass, I think it needs a little bit of time for us to understand their, okay, what exactly we need, the data for exactly to prepare our avatar, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So I definitely want to hear from your end as well.
Sure, sure. And talking about the strategy, from my point of view, I usually go for one of two strategies.
Mhm.
And the one strategy is, let's call it the shotgun, and the other strategy is more or less the sniper rifle. I use the shotgun when I work on a vacancy that has a lot of potential candidates that can match for this vacancy. And in that case, I can reach out to, let's say, tens, maybe even 100 plus potential candidates. And in that, because I have so much potential candidates, I don't have to go very deep in every candidate, and every message should be personally or whatsoever, because I can reach out more. And even though if out of, let's say, 200 reach outs, I have a 10% positive reply rate. So if I reach out to 220 people would get back to me in a positive way. Of those 20 people, let's say 10 people are suitable for the vacancy, and you can have your interviews with them, etc. I'm quite sure of those 10 people, I can fill the vacancy. If on the other hand, I'm working on a vacancy that has quite a lot less suitable candidates, let's say 30 to 50, I'm just guessing, but if that is the entire candidate pool, well, I have to be more personal, because if I just reach out generically and I have a 10% positive reply, then it drops back to 3 to 5. And at that point, I might go to myself, yeah, this is going to be a close one. So I don't want to use that. I want to have the positive replies as high as I can. I'll have to invest more time in getting to know my candidate and getting to know what might motivate them to at least think of a potential job switch. But by doing so, the positive reply rate, it exponentially grows. And so out of the 30 to 50 people I reach out to, if let's say half of them replies in a positive way, I have 15 to 25 good candidates. Have a call with them. Let's say half of them is suitable for the job, and I have the same numbers as with the shotgun approach.
Yes, good terms you have used, shotgun and sniper. I like it. I like it. So here, there's a lot of stress comes in, Paul, when we have a work pressure and we have to deliver people, and we have taken a lot of time in working on a requirement, but we could not able to do that. So as a recruiter, you understand what I'm talking about, the emotional level stress. So how do you overcome your stress, Paul? Would you like to share to the viewers?
Yeah, sure. Especially before let's say the COVID period of time, we had quite a bit of work stress in the company I work with. I work with one other recruiter, and together we work for a company that has over 1,100 people in the Netherlands. So we have about 100 vacancies a year. So you can imagine the pressure, and of course it is all tech recruitment. The way I deal with stress, at least at that time, I woke up early. 5 o'clock was the wake up for me. I'd work out, let's say, to 15 to 30 minutes, just to get the physical motor going. And by getting the physical workout, I know the stress level in my head would go down. And if I start my day with a more or less a relaxed feeling, I would know I could handle the stress that would build up over the day. So after working out, I had my routine at the home. I would have my breakfast. I would walk the dog, And at about 6:30, I would get in the car, be at the office at around 7. And because some Dutchies like to get up early and start working early, but most of them don't. Most of them start at around, let's say, 8:30. That's when the business day really goes on. So I'd have a window of about 1.5 hours just to start up my day.
Awesome. You have added a very great point here. It definitely tells that how passionate about your work, Paul. That is what is one of the things we require in this industry, right? We need to own the job. It's not that we do the checklist kind of job, that I come at 9 o'clock, I leave at 6 o'clock. And we definitely cannot do that because we'll be competing with other people. Now you shared your schedule that you start early. And there is no doubt that the people who come sacrifice this much, then definitely they'll have more success than other people who start 1.5 hours late than what you have started. Good to know that. Yeah, please continue. Please continue.
So I'm at the office at around 7 o'clock, which gives me a window of about 1.5 hours just to do the things I really have to do and to put my mind on it, to have less external pressure. Let's say between the period of time between 7 o'clock in the morning and 8:30, most of the managers I work with, they're still at home or maybe still in bed, so they won't get on the phone to ask me, well, Paul, how's this vacancy going? So I'd have at least 1.5 hours of really quality time to get done what I needed to get done. On the other hand, it also gives me the opportunity to have a quick call with candidates before their workday starts. Some of the candidates, well, most of the candidates I work with, they are already in a job. So between the let's say the hours of 8:30 and 5-6 o'clock in the afternoon, they're busy. I'm not going to call them because they're at work, and mostly they tell me, well, maybe I can squeeze in a 30-minute call before work or after work, perhaps too. So if someone is an early bird, just as I am, and they tell me, well, Paul, can you make a quick early call? Sure, no problem. I'll squeeze in that too. For instance, last Friday, one of the candidates told me, well, I do have time for a quick call, but to be honest, it would be best for me if we could have that before I start my job. So 7 o'clock, I was on the phone with them. Wow. Between the hours of 8:30 and let's say 5, most of it is day-to-day routine. You answer your emails, you interview candidates, you have hiring managers at your desk, and in that way, every day is different. Mostly, you can plan your time, but 9 out of 10 times the day goes different than you initially planned it, and the flexibility you need to have that. But at day's end, the office day's end, of course, I go home, have time with my wife, cook dinner, go to the gym, walk with the dog, speak to some friends, visit my parents, just normal stuff. But also the candidates that don't like to have calls in the early morning or during the working day, I could also always set up a call with them as well. And that gives you a bit of a broken up day, let's say, because I can do my work from 7 o'clock even to let's say 10 at night, and I try to find a certain balance between that. If in a week I have a call at 7 o'clock in the morning and I work to let's say 5-6, and I also have a call at 8 o'clock in the evening, I always try to balance it. Let's say if and the Friday afternoon, the office is always less busy. Quite a few people in the Netherlands work part-time, so you have less managers that come to your desk. And in that case, I might tell myself, well, I'm done for the day. It's 3 o'clock. Sun is shining outside. Well, bye-bye. I'm off to home. So finding the right balance between putting in the extra effort, but also when time allows, just ease back. Take some time for yourself.
Right. If you have to advise three top skills for recruiters which can bring them success, Paul, what would
Mhm.
you suggest according to you that every recruiter must have that if they
Ooh,
want to succeed?
that's a good one. Three top skills. First and foremost would be listening. Listening is key. Listening to your candidates, listening to your managers, listening to your clients. If you're only in the conversation to talk and to get your message across to the other person, you're going to miss by such an amount. It's well, I can keep talking, but I think I made my point known. Listening is by far the most crucial skill you need to have as a recruiter.
Yes.
What I'd say a second skill would be, I'm not quite sure if you can call it a skill, but let's go for it anyway. Be authentic. Just be yourself. People will know when you're playing a role or when you're saying things that
We
aren't
can
real
call that
whatsoever.
personal value, right? That's one of the value thing. Yeah.
Exactly. The experience that I have, people do business with people, whether it is a candidate or a manager or a client, they are doing business at that point with you. If you can win over the candidate because you're a funny, let's say a bit goofy guy, but the candidate responds well to that, that relationship is golden. If let's say you're well, can I get another example for that? Um, just be yourself. If you're playing a role, people won't respond to that well. And as a recruiter, you are an ambassador for your own brand. And as a recruiter, if you work as a corporate recruiter, you're also an ambassador for your company, but you are the spokesperson at that time for your company. So they need to know who you are, what your values are. So being yourself is, in my opinion, very much a second skill you need to master. And as an addition to that, be comfortable with who you are.
Mm.
As the example I've given you before, I was talking about funny, a bit goofy guy. Well, in fact, I am describing myself. That is at least how I see myself. You see, I have a beard, I have glasses. Some people, at least when I grew up, would describe me as a more or less a traditional nerd. But I live up to it. I don't mind it if people call me a nerd. And to get back to your initial question, the third skill I would say every recruiter needs to master, time management. Definitely time management, and also being flexible at that too.
Absolutely. So you have covered everything in your three answers. Yes, that is the primary thing which makes someone successful. Absolutely. And when we say about the building rapport, Paul, so before we end, I definitely want to understand from you that you talk to people all the time, and even do you think that we need to focus on few things to build rapport, or if what we should do in order for the candidates to believe the recruiter and work with them?
Mm, Well, in my experience, what works best if you reach out to a candidate, well, in the stadium where you talk to a person on the phone or either face to face, just have at least 1 2 minutes just for chit chat. Don't get straight to business. Try to make them comfortable. Try to tell them how the conversation is going. For instance, if I have a candidate on the phone call, I'll always tell them, hey, name. We've talked over LinkedIn. I sent you a message regarding that position. That's why I'm calling. Is this a convenient time for you? And they most likely say, yeah, we agreed on this time, so everything is well. And I just downplay it. Well, I always ask if it could have also been that something skipped through and we had to reschedule, but that's not the case. Thank you for having the time. How are you today? And then they most likely say, well, I'm quite okay, bit busy at the job. It's raining outside. Family member is ill whatsoever. And you can, I'm pretty sure no one is too busy as a recruiter that you can't find 2 minutes in a conversation just to have some chit chat. And when the conversation is going on, you feel the moment that it's the right time to switch over to the business part. I have to come back to the Fingerspitzengefühl. You feel it. You feel it in your gut. This is the right moment. You have shown the respect to your candidate that you really want to know that person, what is going on in their world, let's say, and when they've shared what they wanted to share, obviously they want to get down to business at some point in the conversation as well. You will feel it. Mm-hmm. And at that point, you can get more into the position if you want to start with asking the candidate about their experience or the company they work in. You can do that. If you want to start by telling the candidate more about the vacancy or about the company you're recruiting for, you can do that as well. But let's say 2 to 5 minutes chit chat, that is crucial to build the rapport, because in those few minutes, you also you have a bit of a layout of the person you're talking to. If they communicate in let's say a more or less analytical way, you can know, okay, this type of person I'm calling. If someone pours out their heart and starts telling about a young daughter that's been born and that has been up crying all night, you know, okay, this person likes to share a lot. Maybe I can share a bit about my personal life as well. And you can build the rapport based on that. Those first 2 to 5 minutes, I wouldn't go as far as to say they're crucial for the conversation, but they set the candidate at ease and also give you quite a bit of information that you can use to build out the rest of the conversation.
No, absolutely. And Paul, how long do you talk while review or screening a candidate? Do you have set time? So do you think recruiters should spend enough time while screening? Because I have seen most of the recruiters, they speak around 3 to 5 minutes and they're boom, ready with the submission. So what do you suggest for the people who submit with a 5 minutes or 4 or 5 minutes talking and submit? It's like more of a checklist. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I understand. It all depends on what your client wants. Some managers I work with in my corporate recruitment job, they just want to know the basic. What has someone done? Give me an example of their motivation to switch companies, and I want to know a salary range. For those conversations, it's okay if you, let's say, give a 15 to 30 minutes time, so you can have the information for your manager. If on the other hand a manager would like more details about their working experience, certain failures they had in their career so far whatsoever, those calls mostly take up about an hour. So you should know the objective you have for the call. If you just need to know 3 things of a candidate, 15 minutes is okay. If you need to know 10 things with examples, an hour should be better.
Yeah, that's a pretty good answer. Yes. So if you need 10 different things, but you close in 5 minutes, then it's like definitely it is going to backfire in one or the other point of time. Do you agree with me on that?
Yes, sure. 2 reasons. If you need to ask your candidate 10 things and you finished up the call in, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes, it's basically a questionnaire by phone. My question was, what's your name? Well, my name is Suman. Okay. How long have you been active in the recruiting branch? 17 years. What companies have you worked for? This, and this, etc., etc. And I know the flat facts of your career, but if I look up your resume, I'm quite sure I have the same details. And if I rush a call in let's say 50 minutes, I don't know the depth of it. I don't know if you're lying. I don't know more about you. I don't have a personal relation with you. And therefore, if you are, for instance, interviewing with other companies as well, I'm quite sure if another recruiter gets to build a more personal connection with you, I'm quite sure that you're more likely to join that other company, because the feeling
Exactly.
for your next career move is way better than with a recruiter that just asks you flat out, what's your name, what company you work for, how many years you have experience. It's I think, and I think that's let's say a bridge to the first part of our conversation. If you make an interview with a candidate, whether it's someone who has applied to your vacancy directly, or a candidate that you've sourced yourself and approached yourself, an interview with a recruiter should have at least a bit of fun. Just a bit of fun, and even if you're recruiting at director level, just a bit of fun.
Yes. So you mean to say there's a little bit of human touch, right? Like apart from the business. So finally,
Yeah.
we are human beings and we are in a different part. So let's talk about some like out of business thing. That's what you mean when you're talking about fun thing, right?
Oh yes, at least a bit of out of business things,
No, I agree.
but also take some room to make a small joke, or at least try to make the candidate laugh a bit. And in my opinion, that also builds the rapport, and it builds the relationship you have with the candidate.
Awesome. Very, very nice. And Paul, I worked with one of the biggest, largest recruiting company in the world, Randstad, where the owner is from Netherlands. You know, right?
Yeah.
It's this goal skimming goal. It's Brits, Mr. It's Fritz Goldsmithing. Yeah, Fritz Goldsmithing. He's the Dutch businessman.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I connected with you as well from that country. Glad to know that. Yes. All right. So final question to you, Paul. So do you feel recruiting industry has a future, or do you think one should make a career in this irrespective of the geography they stay?
It's a good question. The short answer would be recruiting definitely has a future. I'm quite sure, and I have to step back to what I said earlier. People do business with people, and as long as there will be a hiring process for every company that needs to attract talent, to assess talent, to onboard talent, there will always be a human factor in that. And I think that's a role any recruiter could be able to take on.
Awesome. No, I agree with you on that point as well. So before we end, do you have anything to share that you think the viewer should know?
Well, that's a good one. I think we've been talking for about 3/4 of an hour, so I've shared quite a lot about my experiences and what I do think is important for this
Yes.
this
We are
type
glad
of
to know all these things. You shared a lot of things. Yes.
Yeah. Just to summarize, what I would say for anyone either starting in recruitment or being active in recruitment for quite some time.
So
Listen as much
maybe
as
you want to
can.
give some suggestion for freshers, could be?
Sorry?
You may would like to give some limelight to the freshers who are starting in this industry. just giving an example. If you want to add something, that's what I wanted to hear.
Okay. For the starters, try to be a sponge, learn as much as you can. There are tons of seniors that have passion for recruitment, and I'm 100% sure they are willing to share their knowledge. Don't be afraid to fail. I would also tell that in another light. You're going to fail one way or another. Don't be afraid to do so, and be authentic. Be yourself. That's the best you can do.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so very much, Paul, for coming and sharing your experience, your views, and your wisdom with
No problem at all.
recruiters here.